Every championship team has one, every office has one, every family has one, the glue guy. Welcome to episode 1. This week, the Masters starts Thursday and the defending champion storyline is real. The NBA MVP race is basically over. The Final Four championship game is set, UConn and Michigan. And in listener takes, whether Duke losses are the most celebrated in sports, and your NBA award takes as we head into the final week of the season. Now let's start with a number. 90 Masters tournaments. 3 successful title defenses. 3. Nicholas in 96, Faldo in 90, Tiger in 02. That's it. 3 times 90 years has a defending champion put the green jacket back on. The success rate, about 3.3%. And here's the thing. That number was hard to hit 50 years ago. It's even harder to hit now. A few stats from a few of the other major sports. The NFL repeats about 15% of the time. The NBA, around 23%. But nobody has done it since the Warriors in 7 years ago. MLB is at 12%. Across every sport, defending a title is getting more difficult, not less. The reason, to me, seems straightforward. Technology, analytics, film. The field catches up faster than it ever has. What worked last year, it's on tape now. It's in a spreadsheet, and every opponent has spent 12 months studying it. The margins seem to be shrinking. In golf, that seems to be even more true. You can model Augusta now in ways you couldn't a decade ago. Every pin position, every wind pattern, every slope. The course doesn't change, but the preparation around it does. Sustaining dominance in the modern era is genuinely harder than it has ever been. And the Masters defending champion history, it reflects that. So what does that mean for Rory this week? Let's look at what the last 5 champions actually did when they came back to defend. Matsuyama wins in 21, comes back in 22, and finishes tied 14th. Scheffler wins in 22, comes back in 23, and is the best player in the world, finishes 3rd. Rahm wins in 23, comes back in 24, finishes tied for 14th. Hasn't seriously contended at Augusta since. Scheffler wins again in 24, comes back last year as the world number 1 and finishes 4th. The pattern seems to be consistent. They come back, they're in the conversation, and then something finds them on the back 9 Sunday. The field is just too good, too prepared, too locked in on what the defending champion is going to do. Rory's situation is different from all of them, and in some ways, to me at least, even harder. He spent years, 17 attempts, chasing the Grand Slam at Augusta. That chase is what got him out of bed every April. It is what made him the most compelling story in golf for a decade every time he laced him up to walk those grounds. He finally got it last year in a playoff over Justin Rose. One of the most emotional moments in golf in a long, long time. And now he has to come back and do it again without any of that fuel. He withdrew from Bay Hill with a back issue. He skipped the Texas events leading in. He hasn't won since last April. His prep this year looks nothing like any of his previous master builds. Look, I hope Rory takes this seriously. I hope he shows up Thursday and makes it clear he has something to prove even without the Grand Slam hanging over him. I hope he takes his title defense seriously. The best champions find a new motivation every year. They defend. They make the conversation about legacy, not just relief. But based on everything we can see from the outside net right now, the prep, the schedule, the back issue, the silence, I'm not sure we're going to get that version of Rory. We'll find out on Thursday. Watch his body language on the first tee. That might tell you something, or everything. For me, the NBA MVP race, it's over. SGA wins it, and it isn't even close. Here's what the award seems to really follow. It follows winning, and it follows durability. Those are the 2 things that have defined MVP winners more than any other stat going back decades. Only 3 MVPs since 1980 came from teams with fewer than 50 wins. 3. The award is a team award as much as it is an individual one. And OKC is on pace for one of the best records in NBA history. SGA is leading that team, playing every single night, and doing it without his right-hand man. And without that right-hand man, SGA hasn't skipped a beat. He broke Wilt Chamberlain's record of 126 consecutive 20-point games. He did it, and he did it against Jokic. His numbers are 32.5 points per game, shooting over 54% on the best team in the league. He checks every single box. The 65-game eligibility rule exists because the league got tired of stars sitting out. SGA playing every night is not just a stat, it is itself part of the argument. It is a statement. In an era where load management is a strategy, he just plays. Now for Wembanyama, I want to be careful here because what he is doing at 21 years old is unlike anything we've ever seen in the history of the league. 24 points, 11 rebounds, 3 blocks per game. The blocks number alone is unlike any MVP candidate in the modern era. He is not just good, he's historically unusual. The youngest MVP was Derrick Rose at 22. Wemby is 21. There is no player his age who has ever won this award. But here's where I land on it for now. Until San Antonio passes Oklahoma City in the standings, which I don't think is going to happen this year, I can't have Wemby in the conversation. The award follows winning, always. And right now, OKC is the 1 seed. Unless that changes, this is SGA's award. Wemby's time, I'm sure it's coming. And likely very soon, like next year soon. But this year, it's SGA, and it's not a debate. Michigan versus UConn, national championship. Michigan is a 6.5 point favorite. That number seems to tell you everything about how this tournament has gone so far for the Wolverines. Michigan is the first team in NCAA tournament history to score at least 90 points in 5 straight games. They haven't just won, they've really physically overwhelmed every team they've played. They physically overwhelmed Arizona, who was doing that to every team they were playing. They're winning by an average of 21.6 points per game in this tournament. That's not just a run, it's a statement. And yet, UConn is on a 19-game winning streak in the second weekend or later of the NCAA tournament. Every time they've made the Sweet 16 under Hurley, they've won the national championship. 23, 24, and now they're back trying to do it again. The matchup everyone is watching, Michigan is played at one of the fastest tempos in the country, 22nd nationally. UConn plays at one of the slowest, 319th. 2 of Michigan's 3 losses this season came at 63 possessions or fewer. UConn is going to try to turn this into a half-court grind. Michigan is going to try and push it into transition before UConn can set its defense. Whoever wins that battle likely wins the game. The injury question, nobody has an answer to. Lendenberg's MRI came back clean, and he's committed to playing. But clean MRI and fully healthy are 2 very different things. He's the Big Ten Player of the Year and the most important player on the floor. How many minutes can he actually give them? On the UConn side, Alex Karaban has played on 2 national championship teams, but has struggled in the last 2 games, most recently going 1 for 8 from the field against Illinois. UConn's going to need him. The history angle. Michigan is 0-4 in national championship games since 1989, including losses with the Fab Five in 92 and 93, and again in 2013 and 2018. The program has been here before and come home empty. Tonight is a chance to end that. For UConn, no program has won 3 national championships in a 4-year span since the 72 through 75 UCLA Bruins, John Wooden's UCLA. That is the company Hurley is chasing. Michigan seems to have the horses. UConn seems to have the blueprint. Should be a good one. And now for our parlay of quick hit takes. The robot ump era is here. Maybe a bunch of you have watched the first couple of games of the MLB season and ABS. I love it so far. Teams are using it in smart ways, in dumb ways. But what I love is that when ABS goes the way of the home team, the crowd goes crazy. And any moments we can add to sports where it's engaging the fans in a big way, overturning a strikeout to a walk, overturning a walk to a strikeout. I love that when it happens, especially for my team. And the chance to extend a game or to get a call right that is wrong, I'm all for it. And I think that teams are going to have to flush out how they use this, and they'll get better at it over time. But I think it's added another great aspect to baseball, and it's a sport that just continues to get slight rule changes right over and over again, where the NBA and NFL are slowing down the games and their rule changes are creating complications and making the game worse. The MLB has figured out, I guess, the right equation for making their games better and better. And I think I will watch more baseball games this year than I have in years past, certainly. The World Cup field is set. Italy officially is going to miss its 3rd straight World Cup. What's silly is that there's a Euro Cup win in the middle of that, but that is the biggest story, and their loss to Bosnia in penalties to eliminate them from the World Cup. The USA will open on June 12th versus Paraguay in SoFi Stadium, and that's to come. I think really excited about the World Cup. The Buffalo Sabres. 14 years is an eternity in professional sports. Buffalo fans have been through it. This one really matters, I think. The Sabres clinched the playoffs yesterday. and ended the longest active drought in NHL history. For context, the Jets are at 15 years in the NFL, Angels are at 11 in the MLB, and the Charlotte Hornets are at 9 in the NBA. Buffalo was the second longest across all 4 major sports. Now it's just the Jets. Poor Jets. Buffalo sat in last place in the East as recently as December. They fired their GM, brought on a new GM, and since have had an NHL best 30. And for our out of bounds segment of the week, Artemis II. Artemis II launched on April 1st and is the first crewed mission to the moon in 50 plus years. Maybe you've been reading about this, maybe you've been following this, maybe your kids are telling you all about it. April 2nd, they broke free of Earth's orbit for the first time since Apollo 17 in 1972, 54 years ago. I am not a conspiracy theorist, but it does seem quite crazy that it has been 50 plus years since we have left Earth's orbit. Anyways, April 6th, Monday, will be the lunar flyby. So as you're listening to this, likely 4 humans will be flying around the moon. On that crew, Wiseman, Glover, who's the first Black astronaut on a lunar mission, Coach, and Hansen, who is the first Canadian to around the moon, we'll say. There was some weather and a pressure leak alarm that made the crew briefly think they might have to abort the mission, but both were false alarms. We talked about Rory defending a championship in sports. The United States, I guess, is defending their championship in space, going back to the moon for the first time and repeating as the only country to have been out there around the moon, I guess, with people. And now for our listener takes. Ryan, writing in from Los Angeles, California. Player comp, Vince Carter, 2019 Hawks. Just moved from a veteran team that had everything figured out to a young roster that is also winning. But now I'm the older guy in the locker room playing fewer minutes, and the game looks a little different than it used to. Still here, still contributing, but the role has changed and I know it. Ryan, I believe, has a take about Duke and Duke's loss in the tournament last week.
This was just an unbelievable reminder for them to lose in this fashion, that there is nothing else in sports that the sports world celebrates more collectively when it really doesn't even have anything to do with them. They can have nothing to do with it. Watching that team lose in the tournament makes the sports world happy.
I personally do not have the same level of Duke hatred that it seems the rest of the country does. And to Ryan's point, I am not celebrating Duke losses in the same way that maybe he is and that others are around the country. I did think it was a really interesting take, though, and I heard it at the beginning of the week. So to do a little bit of research, I took that take and put it on Reddit, and appreciate the 20,000 people that engaged with this Reddit post. But I asked, is Duke the team whose losses are celebrated more than any other team in the country? And I listed out a couple of other teams who I thought might fit the bill, right? The Yankees, the Dodgers in baseball, in the NFL, the Brady Patriots, and the Chiefs as a most recent. In the NBA, we listed out a couple, same with college football, college basketball. Overwhelmingly, the response came in that Alabama football is and should be the most celebrated loss in sports. What was really fascinating about what everybody put into was that there was moments that people would name that they reflect on constantly as one of the biggest celebrations of any one single loss. Auburn wins the football game was certainly one of the things that came up in the thread the most. Now, people added in soccer, Euro League examples. They added in fighting and all kinds of different examples as well. And all of them were fascinating. But overwhelmingly, over and over again, people cited Alabama football as the thing. This got me thinking, and we had a number of conversations with friends and family about why this is, why certain teams are hated so much and their losses celebrated so dramatically. And this is one of the things that I think I want to avoid on this podcast is leading with these types of teams. When you think about the Dodgers and the Yankees, the Lakers, Alabama football, Duke basketball, these are the things that lead the biggest podcasts, the biggest talk shows every single week, because you're either a fan or you're an anti-fan, I guess, and you hate them. And that fandom and hatred is the thing that keeps people engaged in a lot of shows, I would assume. I want to do the best to avoid that in here. And I want to spread the love around. You'll see me in my A's hats. I won't deny that I'm not a fan of Bay Area teams and that I'm a fan of certain college sports, but I'm not going to spend time on my teams more than any other team should be in the limelight in the moment. I really want to focus on the biggest stories of the week. Now, if that is the Lakers and the Yankees next week, there's a possibility that we'll spend time on them. But more likely than not, it's going to be the Thunder and the Sabres who are going to qualify for the playoffs for the first time in 14 years. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and the significance of that. And so, Ryan, while I appreciate the take that Duke's losses are more celebrated than any other team's losses in sports, I think the broader piece is that leading and talking about those teams so significantly doesn't do us or anybody else any good. Our second listener take comes from Kendrick in Houston, Texas. He says his player comp is Dennis Rodman on the Bulls. Finished my first career, landed on a championship caliber team in my second, but I am not the star and everybody knows it. I'm doing the dirty work, grabbing the rebounds nobody else wants, and trying to carve out my role without getting in the way of the guys the whole thing is built around. And Kendrick, your take?
Coach of the year, that is going to Mitch Johnson for me, for the San Antonio Spurs. Defensive player of the year is going to Victor Wembanyama, okay? And here we are. The MVP is going to SGA. For me, SGA is getting my vote for MVP. 60-win season, 31 points, and doing that coming fresh off a long-ass run to win the NBA championship. I don't understand. I don't know if people understand how hard that is to do.
While I appreciate the submission this week and providing an example for listeners and hopefully the many submit a takes that will come, I don't know that I have a response because the take is pretty bland. I already covered that I think that SGA is the MVP. I think that Wembanyama for Defensive Player of the Year is the easiest vote that there's been in 50 years. And I could not really care less about Coach of the Year at this stage. I guess my feelings are pretty similar to those of Mr. Mazzulla's, who stated, I think earlier this week, that we should keep the focus on the players. Not that I fully agree with that. I think that there should be a Coach of the Year, but I don't know that I'm ready to get into it with anybody about who that should be. Now, I hope that everybody could appreciate the fake submitted takes that came in this week. What I do hope is that it serves as an example of what this segment might look like and feel like. I would love to have listeners on to have their takes made in person over the air. As you can imagine, something like calling into a radio show 10 years ago. But if you don't feel comfortable coming on live, please still submit your takes over email to glueguypodcast@gmail.com or over the website glueguypodcast.com. I will name the one other thing that you heard was a player comp at the beginning of those. The intentionality around that is to try and identify a professional athlete who you would compare yourself to at your current mark in life. So where are you at in your career, your family, your stage of life, and what player might you compare yourself to who had a similar type of career, who is at a similar stage of their career, but in their own professional sport. Now, next week, the Masters will be done. We'll have a winner. We'll have a reaction, and the question everyone is going to be asking is whether Rory came out flat or came out hungry. I think that answer will matter. I love defending a championship. Plus, the NBA and NHL playoffs are just a week away. A lot to get into. Again, send in your takes this week, and I'll see you here next Sunday.